My name is Shannon Bagley, and this is my persuasive speech for Class Com 111. My purpose today is to persuade Class Com 111 and communities around the United States that the three-strike rule should be abolished for child sex offenders upon their first offense and other sex offenders beyond their first offense. Imagine your child being in the hands of one of these offenders in our local community. Let's fight back for the freedom in our community. In the inefficient and ineffective use of law against offenders and child abusers, let these criminals do their minimal time and are let go to recommit these horrible and outlandish crimes against our families, children, and neighbors. The three-strike rule lets the offenders commit these crimes up to 2 times before having a more serious penalty put into place. With those types of laws, these criminals have free rein to commit many offenses before paying their just dues back to the victims who may never really fully recover. Today, I would first like to speak with you about the current state of our nation's problematic judicial system, and then pose a solution to correct the dire situation that exists today. In order for you to understand why we need to eliminate the three-strike rule, we first must understand who and what is classified as a criminal, as a sexual offender, and a child sexual abuser, along with why these laws classify them as such. According to the Maryland Attorney General, is often someone who is named one of the following and may be male or female. A sexual violent predator is an offender who has been convicted of a sexual and violent offense and has been deemed by the court likely to do it again. A sexually violent offender is an offender who has been convicted of a sexually violent offense. Child sex offenders. An offender is one who has been convicted of any of the following offenses by the victim who is less than 15 years old. On to explain and what is considered a first or second degree rape. A first degree rape is vaginal intercourse by force or threat. A second degree rape is the above mentioned and including with persons who are mentally disabled victim, or a victim who is under 14 years old, or the perpetrator being 4 years older than the victim. A sexual offense is one of the following. A first degree sexual offense is a sexual act by force or threat. A sexual act is oral sex, anal sex, or penetration by an object, but does not include vaginal intercourse. A second degree sexual offense is a sexual act by force or threat with somebody who is mentally disabled, or a victim who is under 14 years old, or the perpetrator being 4 years older. A sexual act is oral sex, anal sex, or penetration by an object, but does not include vaginal intercourse. Third degree sexual offense is a sexual contact without the consent of the victim. The sexual contact is intentionally touching the genitalia, victim under the age of 14, or the perpetrator being 4 years older than the victim. The Kids Safe Foundation Internet Statistics report 1 out of every 3 to 4 girls will be sexually assaulted by the time they're the age of 18. And 1 boy out of every 6 will be abused by the age of 18. Although we have some reports and convictions to base these statistics on, they're actually not accurate. So many cases of child molestation go unreported. The average child molester will molest 50 girls before being caught and convicted for the first time. The child molester that seeks out boys will molest 150 boys before being caught and convicted for the first time. And he will commit at least 280 sex crimes in his lifetime. There are over 491,720 registered sex offenders in the United States as we speak. 80,000 to 100,000 of the above offenders are missing. According to city data, the data given shown massive numbers of offenders per resident. Offender research in Maryland states that we have 55 registered sex offenders living in Laurel on April 2010. The ratio number of residents in Laurel to the number of sex offenders is 410 to 1. Furthermore, there were 1,731 registered sex offenders living in Baltimore in April of 2010. The ratio number of residents in Baltimore and number of sex offenders is 369. Lastly, there was a whopping 141 registered sex offenders living in Hagerstown in April of 2010. Racking up the ratio of number of residents in Hagerstown to the number of sex offenders by 282 to 1. While these facts are truly sobering, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The hope lies in the concept of changing the three-strike rule. The Ottawa City newspaper published Three-Strike Rules, Crime Bill of Shame on March 10, 1994. Critics say in the United States, the latest slogan to battle against crime is 3 strikes and you're out. A rule that locks up repeat offenders for life without parole after their 3rd felony. This gives the criminals 2 previous attempts at committing these crimes in our communities with our children and our neighbors and our family. But criminologists say that the 3-strike rule is an overrated sham designed by politicians to make people think that the government is fighting crime, when in fact more violent criminals are being freed. The Washington Times on April 6, 2007 says there are presently 10,000 registered sex offenders who move to new addresses and jobs daily. There are many court cases that validate this need for change. For example, Brock E. Norris was convicted by a jury for child molestation in the 1st degree. Yes, Norris had been convicted of child molestation 10 years previous. Rehabilitation of sex offenders is not practical or feasible beyond their popular belief. Serious offenders are known to repeat their crimes. Child abuse and sex predators are a hindrance to our communities. They affect the communities in a hurtful, negative manner, creating an environment where we are scared to let our children out to play. I would also like to add that the female community members have become afraid to be out walking around after dusk. This again takes away from the freedom of us as individuals. I hope that my brief speech on the necessity for change in our current laws has helped you more fully understand the crisis that we are currently facing in our communities, and the necessity for change in order to enable us to continue to enjoy the quality of life. We should take every opportunity to drive legislators and government to pursue these actions that we are striving for, and make changes for the betterment of our communities and our country, for safer living environments, not only for ourselves, but for our family, our friends, and our children. In a speech by Governor O'Malley, who testifies on a proposal to improve public safety where violent crimes is concerned, we are the 4th most violent state in the Union, and there's no good reason for it. We all need to fight back against violent crime, and our state needs to become a much stronger and more forward-leaning partner in our local law enforcement. It is not just local law enforcement by themselves, or even the counties, towns, or municipal law enforcement by themselves, but rather all of us together. In hopes to preserve our community's freedom and safety for all of us and our children, we need to look further into helping the government understand the seriousness of these concerns and to make necessary changes to better our communities. By changing the 3-strike rule for child abusers upon their first offense and repeated sex offenders beyond their first offense, these changes can only better our environments that we live in and for our children. Thank you.